But right now I want to shift the focus to this year's keynote, which is Representative Jim McGovern, and we're thrilled to have you here. I just want to say everybody, I think, is feeling a lot of pain given the federal situation, and it was fortuitous in a way that this is the year that you chose to come back to speak to us. Fortuitous for us, I'm not so sure for you, but some of you will remember that Rep. McGovern was our keynote back in 2015. It's a uniquely great time for him to be with us now. As many of you know, Representative Jim McGovern represents the 2nd Congressional District in Massachusetts, which includes Amherst, so he's here. He took the top role, he's been the top Democrat on the House Rules Committee since 2018 and served as its chair during the 116th and 117th Congress. Among his many successes, Congressman McGovern is widely recognized in conservation circles for the instrumental role he played in protecting and expanding the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant program, including his role in helping to pass the Great American Outdoors Act. He's also been a stalwart on agriculture, and through his work on the House Agricultural Committee, he further championed the creation of the Blackstone River Valley National Historic Park and has brought millions of dollars worth of federal funding to Worcester that has been instrumental in numerous redevelopment and revitalization projects. A Worcester native, he worked his way through college, earned a BA in history, then spent over a decade working in the office of Congressman Joe Moakley. In 1996, he successfully ran for Congress and has been reelected ever since, much to our benefit. So welcome, Congressman McGovern. As you take the stage, I just want to, I meant to mention that the way, he's going to moderate his own Q&A, but there's 2 mics in the aisles, so for those of you who do want to ask a question, you should approach the mic if you're able and ask your questions there. Thank you.
Rob, these your glasses? No. Okay, all right, make sure. Well, first of all, Rob, thank you for the generous introduction. I can hardly wait to hear what I'm going to say after that build-up. And thank you to everyone for the opportunity to speak today. You don't know how goddamn happy I am to be with you here and not in Washington right now. So I see a lot of friendly faces in the crowd, and I'm grateful for the work that you all do to make Massachusetts such a special place. You know, I have seen so much of the great work that land trusts do over the course of my career, from the incredible trail network that runs through my hometown of Worcester to the support for sustainable agriculture and new farmers that happens across the state, to the protection of such special places right here in the western part of Massachusetts. So much of what you do happens behind the scenes, but so many people benefit from your dedication. And I want to say from the bottom of my heart that it's been an honor to partner with you on so many things. By the time I retire, I think with redistricting, I will probably have represented the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And through the years, it's been a joy to help bring federal support to what you all do. You know, back when I first got elected in 1996, one of my first term wins was defeating an attempt by then Speaker Newt Gingrich to zero out the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And almost 25 years later, in 2020, as Rob pointed out, I was proud to play my part in making LWCF funding permanent. And that's something that seemed like a long shot when I first got into Congress. Indeed, when we took on Newt Gingrich in 1997, I went to the floor fully expecting to lose that vote. But because of you and because of people like you throughout the country who elevated this issue, we pulled off a surprise victory. And it happened, again, because of the advocacy of land trusts and other allies throughout the country. And again, I can't thank so many of you in this room who were with me back then, but who have been with us ever since. You know, I've always aimed to be wind at your backs, and quite frankly, you have all made that easy because you're all so full of ideas, energy, and commitment to make things happen. And I've enjoyed playing my part, but I'm just following your leads. Now, I've been asked to speak today about the state of conservation under a new administration and Congress, and I think I need a drink before I get into that. But since I first went down to D.C. as an undergraduate at American University, majoring in history, and I was working as an intern for 3 years for Senator George McGovern, no relation, but a great, great friend and leader. I've seen a lot of new administrations and Congresses come and go, but I have never, ever seen anything like what we are seeing now. We're only 2 months into what I can only describe as Donald Trump's retribution rampage. The destruction and almost gleeful disregard for our institutions and the policies that we value far exceeds anything that he attempted to do in his entire first term. And there were some truly hideous initiatives the last time he was president. But the bottom line is that Trump is trying to remake our government into one that is of, by, and for himself. And he's getting plenty of help from modern-day robber barons like Elon Musk, this weirdo billionaire, plus an alarming number of people who have decided that they can benefit personally and often financially from his destructiveness. Trump seems intent on breaking as much as he can in order to consolidate power, including by trying to take the power of the purse away from Congress and threaten any judge who points out that he's overstepping the authority of his presidency. What might be most shocking to me is that the Republicans in Congress, some of whom I thought were moderate, and who currently control both the House and the Senate, are afraid, are going along to get along, are encouraging his behavior, and in some cases loudly cheering it on. As Elon, and I know that all of you have seen the way that this is impacting your world, and it's just plain wrong, and it is shameful. And as Elon Musk wreaks havoc on federal agencies, we are seeing attempts to purge career civil servants and kneecap agency capacity. They are attempting to close regional offices that are lifelines for the work that you do, like the Fish and Wildlife Service office in Hadley and the USDA offices in Amherst and elsewhere. It is rotten, and quite frankly, it's just plain stupid. The National Park Service is at risk. Science offices are being dismantled at every agency. Approved grant money for projects is being illegally withheld. The White House is sabotaging the clean energy and infrastructure gains of the Biden years. Trump wants to launch a foolish fossil fuel bonanza. And there are credible fears that we will witness a fire sale of federal lands. Meanwhile, Lee Zeldin seems to have decided that the new mission of the EPA is to destroy the EPA from within. And as Rob pointed out, I sit on the Agriculture Committee. Many of you work with farmers, and some of you may even be farmers. USDA is continuing to withhold money it has been ordered to release to farmers, and farmers are terrified that it could spell financial ruin. USDA is also abruptly ending its programs to support local food systems. It seems to me the administration's policy is to destroy independent farming in this country because they know that corporate players are ready to pick up the pieces. Their philosophy toward agriculture is get big or get out. And you put all of this together, and it is clear to me that Trump and his wannabe oligarch pals are attempting a smash and grab. And that's the unifying theme here. And I have to be honest with you, nobody can tell us how far down this dark path we are headed. But they are moving quickly. They are moving very quickly. And one of my worries is that you all are not immune from some of the most alarming things that we're seeing. I chair the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission in Congress. And one important lesson from countries where the rule of law has slipped away is that environmental defenders often become targets. And here's the kicker. We all know that nature can't wait. We don't have 4 years to squander. We need to keep taking action on climate, and we need to reverse course on biodiversity loss and the disappearance of natural spaces. Nature does not care that we are in a political crisis. We are going to have to find a way to make one. Our work must continue, and we have to save all that we can. Now, I cannot say that everything will be okay or that things are destined to get better on their own. I believe that there are ways that we can still make progress on things like conservation and preserving local food systems. We can still protect special places so that we don't lose them, because in this moment, as frightening as it is, we can still be the change that we need. And I think that the work you all do is actually essential to righting the ship. And here's what I mean. First, conservation is a shared value for basically everyone except the robber barons. People in this country know to their core that nature is worth protecting and that it does not belong to any one person, and it sure as hell does not belong to Donald Trump. And some people who care about natural places may not yet be making the connection between what is at risk and why. But there's an opportunity to wake people up to the damage that is being done. And I urge all of you to think about ways that you can build bridges at the grassroots level and across the country with people who share your conservation values but may not connect it to the threats that we currently face. We need a broad coalition of people who are engaged, and that means a big tent. It means working with people where you might not agree on anything else, quite frankly. And you might not even agree with their philosophy about why nature is worth protecting. That is the kind of grassroots organizing, has upstream effects. Right now, we need only about 4 Republicans to cross the aisle to stop a lot of what Trump is trying to do in Congress. This is the tightest margin in the House in nearly 100 years. And there are a lot of Republicans from states like New York and California who stake a big part of their reputation on conservation issues. Republicans are letting so much of the current chaos happen because they are more afraid of Donald Trump and Elon Musk than they are of their own constituents. But that needs to change. And I think you all can play a role in making that happen through conservation advocacy. Second, you are all experts at activating parts of civil society that are less directly tied to national electoral politics. In the course of your work, you talk to state and local officials, town councils, citizen groups, landowners, donors, and more. You bring people together and you get them to yes. You organize. And I'm convinced that people need to remember that civic engagement is about more than just paying attention to Washington. There are opportunities to make positive change and prevent harmful change by understanding how big civil society really is. Third, and most importantly, the core of what you do is build resilience where it is most needed. In nature, in food systems, in our nature-based infrastructure, of course, resilience is everything. That work is fundamentally important in an era where our choices will reverberate in the natural world for centuries. But at a more fundamental level, your work builds other types of resilience too. You are building social resilience by providing access to nature, protecting local food and rural economic development, and providing community spaces. You are increasing neighborliness with each other and with the natural world. And that's why we need you. You are agents of resilience, and resilience is the antidote to Trumpism. So Donald Trump and Elon Musk succeed when they can convince people to see the world as selfishly as they do. Trumpism is the sacrifice of the future, of the planet, of everything at the altar of their own egos. And that's why Trumpism doesn't offer a vision. It's nothing but distrust and disintegration. Resilience is the exact opposite. You work toward a future where our children can have a livable planet because you believe selflessly that it is a future worth fighting for. And so don't give up. What's happening right now, I know it's difficult, but there's a deliberate tactic that this administration is utilizing right now that, quite frankly, if you look at history, is a tactic that's been used by authoritarians and fascists throughout history. And that is you flood the zone with a million things every single day. And you don't even know where to begin because there's so much being thrown at you. But they hope that you'll be overwhelmed, that you will pull the shade, you'll throw up your hands and say it's hopeless and walk away, and then they move in. That's the tactic. It's not working yet. I can tell you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people are showing up at town halls all throughout this country. They want people to fight back. They want to protect what they believe is good about our government, and you are included in the category of what is good. And it's hard. We're all kind of overwhelmed. One of the great things about this job is that I've gotten to meet some really interesting people throughout the years. And over the years, I've had the privilege of meeting on many occasions His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I visited him in India last May, and he's turning 90 this year. And before I left, he gave me these Tibetan prayer beads, which he blessed. And he told me this is to help with my negativity, my uncertainty, my anxiety, and my fear. They're not working. All right? And then and I was telling a story at a town hall in Holliston, and the guy got up and he started to scream, and I didn't know it was a heckler. He wanted to hand me something, and he came up and he gave me rosary beads. So I got to put them on the other hand, I think. And then today I was greeted by a gentleman who gave me 4-leaf clovers. So I feel like, I'm all the lucky charms that I could possibly get, I'm trying to wrap around my body. But the point of the matter is that, while I can't say when things will get better or easier, but at some point I really do believe that things will change back. And sometimes change comes quickly, and when it does, we need to be ready for that moment so that we can do as much good as we possibly can. In the meantime, we need to keep up our work to save all that we can save. And I'm just going to conclude by making the same promise to you that I always have, and that is to be wind at your back. The headwinds are stronger now. They're stronger than perhaps they have ever been. But I believe we can get through this. And I think we all have to come to the conclusion that we can't count on institutions necessarily to save us, the people, right? Institutions will not save people. People will save people. And I think as we approach this moment, I think we have to start thinking out of the box about how we can advocate and how we can defend in ways, quite frankly, that may be a little bit more creative and out of the box and unusual than at any other time before. But if we do that, we will get through this. We will get through this. I don't know why we're at this moment, but I do know this: they're serious about their destruction, and they're moving very, very quickly. And we can't say, well, we'll wait around until 2 years, and maybe we'll win the House back, and maybe we'll win the Senate back. We don't have 2 years. We don't have 2 years. They're closing offices. They're firing people as we speak, people in offices that are essential to the work that you do. So they want to fight? Well, give them a goddamn fight. And I just want to say to all of you, thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing, and please keep going. Do I do questions? Yeah. Okay. If you have a question, go to the mic, and if it's a tough question, I'll yield it to Rob. And
Hi, that was great. But we're in Massachusetts, so we feel like what impact can we have on what's going on in Washington? So I know the obvious answer is you have friends, cousins elsewhere in purple states, red states, contact them, try to motivate them and stuff. But do you have any other words of wisdom you'd like to suggest?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. One is, and I say this with love and affection for all of our political leaders in Massachusetts, myself included, right? But it's important to keep the pressure on us. And it's important to spend more time, I think, informing the community about the incredible benefits of what you are all advocating for. Because some of the fights that we're going to be faced with are not just in Washington, but some of them are here locally. And I got to tell you that I think, even in my own district as I go around, and some of these select boards and school committees and, various local commissions. In some unexpected places, people are getting elected or people are getting appointed who make Donald Trump look like Ted Kennedy. And I'm like, how does that happen, right? And sometimes some of the biggest hurdles can be at the local level. And so we have to pay attention to that. Yeah, if you do have relatives and friends in other states, call them. You can pick up the phone yourself and call the Capitol switchboard and leave a message in the Speaker's office or in a Republican's office who are a little bit wobbly. It's showing up at rallies. Sometimes it's showing up at events in Washington or in neighboring districts. I've been doing town halls in my district, and we've been invited to do some town halls in other people's districts. We're going to go. And by the way, it's not just up to politicians to take the show on the road. It's up to all of us, right? I mean, the expertise in this room, going to other communities and being some wind at the back of some activists like you in some of those states can be very, very helpful about what can happen if you're dedicated to constructive conservation. What does it mean? What are the hurdles? Why these programs are important? The one thing I've kind of come to appreciate is that a lot of the good things that we do, we know about it, but a lot of other people don't know about it. I mean, I get asked in meetings all the time, like, what is NIH and why should I care about medical research? And I'm trying to, I got to connect the dots to, we want to find a cure to cancer or diabetes, and there may be someone in your family, right? What's the whole, what good is, what's the value of the Land and Water Conservation Fund? You got to remind people what has been protected in their communities from this money. This is not about a line item or a nice idea or we want to, sing kumbaya. This is about what is happening in our communities. And there are a lot of people who need to appreciate that the stuff that they seem to enjoy didn't just happen. It happened because of advocacy and hard work, and it happened because of federal money, and sometimes state money, and a lot of times, local money. So I'm all ears. If people have any ideas of constructive things that we can do, I mean, we're trying to do virtual press conferences and press availabilities in other people's districts. We're doing shadow hearings, and not just in Washington, but we're taking the show on the road into districts. But again, I think you ought to be thinking too about how can you help emphasize voices in some of these marginal districts that quite frankly have benefited from some of these programs, but people really might not appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I was just reminded that this is a great opportunity to mention the Land Trust Alliance Advocacy Days, which are coming up. So this is a chance for people to think about making this the year that you travel to DC to speak to your representatives directly. Some of your organizations, work regionally and across New England and have an opportunity to speak to representatives in other districts. So the Land Trust Alliance Advocacy Days, you can find out information on their website, but they're May 5th through the 8th in DC. So hopefully it'll be another chance to connect with McGovern's office.
And let me tell you, that's going to be a crucial time, because the next kind of legislative item, putting Trump aside, but the next thing in Congress that's coming up is something called budget reconciliation. And in that bill, some of the cuts that have been highlighted in their budget will be actually put into legislative language into law. And so we will know very clearly about what the intentions are. And I would just say to everybody here, and to tell your colleagues around the country who are lobbying, don't be a cheap date. I mean, people need to, this is a time not to be political, but to be firm and to be emphatic about the fact that we're not going to sit by quietly while you retreat on all the progress that we have made. Issues like the climate need to still be part of our discussion. And I mean, I represent, a lot of the rural areas here that were adversely impacted by droughts and by torrential rains. And I talked to maple syrup farmers who are having trouble getting maple syrup. I mean, people's livelihoods are at stake here. As my father used to say, be nice, but not too nice to people. I mean, and for your friends, we got to raise our voices more, right? I mean, even our friends need to do more, and you know, we should be impatient, even with our allies in Congress, because again, we don't want them to be so overwhelmed that they're not talking about these issues. Sometimes I get frustrated with myself. I call my office and ask me to do more. So I'm hoping that, you know, you will do the same.
I actually wanted to ask a question too about, you mentioned I don't know if you use the word shock or surprise, or that's what I'm using, to refer to your Republican colleagues and their silence or complicity, or I don't know what the word is, but can you shed a little more light on what you think is going on with them? And are you able to have any meaningful conversations that are not in public necessarily with them, that shed any light on where some hope might lie there?
Yeah, we have lots of meaningful and, you know, I think thoughtful conversations in private, but they don't carry over into public. And you know, and I was walking to a vote with one colleague who was basically saying, this, you know, this is crazy. This guy's a dictator. You know, he's destroying our country. And a reporter put a microphone in front of his face and said, oh, you know, a bill has just been introduced to appropriate money to put Donald Trump's face on Mount Rushmore. You know, what do you think about that? He says, oh, I'm a co-sponsor. But here's the deal. You know, they're afraid. I mean, they're petrified. They're afraid of getting primary challenged, and they're especially afraid of Elon Musk's money. And on top of that, you know, when they go off script, they get threatening calls. And I appreciate all of that. But the fact of the matter is, you know, I don't know why you'd want to go to Congress and vote against your conscience day in and day out. I mean, like, what's the point? What joy do you get out of doing that? You know, I mean, at least stand for something. And Western civilization, as we know it, won't come to an end if you lose your election. But you want to stand for something, right? And I know this is not within your, you know, the usual issues, but when we all get through this, one of the issues that I hope people will get engaged in is the issue of campaign finance reform. Because I'm going to tell you, you know, I mean, campaigns are too damn expensive, and the people who have the money are the people who don't care about the stuff that you're all advocating for here today. And so, you know, when you're trying to get a vote on something, you got even Democrats, they'll say, oh, I'm with you, but boy, I don't know if I want to tick this corporate entity off because they help bundle and raise money for me. Money, this system is out of control, and I think the way to kind of get this ship back on track is to understand that, you know, the biggest enemy of kind of the environmental movement, of dealing with climate change, are corporate special interests. And, you know, and until we deal with that issue, I mean, your jobs are going to be that much harder. And you know, I think we can get through this. I think this time around we could get some members of Congress to be more fearful of their constituents than Elon's money. But, you know, things are getting more and more expensive. And as a result, I think people are suffering, and, you know, corporate special interests, the oligarchs, are doing better. I just say one final thing. You know, people always ask me, like, you know, oh, what's the lesson of the last election? I look at it this way. It's not that Donald Trump got more votes. It's that a whole bunch of people didn't vote. And why didn't they vote? They probably didn't vote because they thought it didn't make a difference. You know, I mean, for a lot of people in this country, the system is broken. It doesn't work. I mean, people, you know, struggled under Obama. They struggled under Trump. They struggled under Biden, and they're still struggling. And it's like, you know, nothing's getting better. And, you know, and part of the reason why is because both parties seem too in bed, you know, with the corporate wing of this country, and that has to change. That has to change. Yeah.
With the destruction on the federal level, and a lot of us losing our jobs and losing our futures, and even losing, and losing our education, even when they're pressuring community colleges and other colleges to change the foundation of our knowledge and how we learn about environmental science. How can the state, on a state level, make up for the loss of funding and the federal destruction to our institutions?
Well, research funding, even student financial aid funding, is obviously being threatened. There seems to be litmus tests that are being put on, our colleges and universities, and, by the way, on hospitals, on community health centers, on colleges. You name it, on anything, any entity that receives federal money. And I've talked to a number of people who are concerned about all of this, and they'll tell me, well, their boards are telling them to lay low so they don't get a target on their backs. I'm just here to tell you, you already have a target on your back. Laying low and being quiet, I think just means they're going to have an easier chance of getting what they want. And at the end of the day, you're going to lose out anyway. I did a roundtable with college students at WPI in Worcester the other day, mainly talking about, student financial aid cuts and cuts in research monies and cuts in Pell Grants and student loans and that kind of stuff. But the conversation kind of turned quickly to the fear of students about being punished for saying what they believe. They talk about that student at Columbia who is a permanent legal resident who is now in a prison in Louisiana and subject to deportation because of not because he committed a violent act, but because of what he said. And they're wondering, well, okay, we have a lot of foreign students here. So does that mean they can't speak? And by the way, how far are we away from where I get student financial assistance and I get up and I say something that is controversial, deemed controversial by the administration, and do they say they're going to freeze my money? And do they punish the school for allowing me to have a demonstration, be it on climate change, be it on what's happening in the Middle East, being on, you name it. And I'm going to tell you, there's a real fear out there that, that people right now don't feel safe in expressing themselves or fighting back. And I've been wearing this pin that says "resist" everywhere. I just came from the jail, visiting in the jail. I took it off when I was in the jail. I didn't want to look like I was starting a riot or anything like that. I'm just telling you, read your history. Read your history. We have to resist. And I get it, and there may be some, pain that, that maybe our state gets targeted or whatever, but to think that we're not going to be targeted ultimately, that, that we're not going to lose funds if we're quiet, I just don't buy that. And people need to know that this is a serious moment. One of the other things is a lot of people think that, oh, we went through one term with him. It was awful, but we got through it. How bad can it be? It's already worse in the first 2 months than it was in his last full 4 years. Going after judges. Judges, make decisions that involve a lot of the work that you all do here. Well, if it goes against a developer that happens to be a big donor, to Trump, do we call for that judge to be impeached? Or do we call for impeachments enough where judges are afraid to actually give people their best judgment? So this is a serious moment.
Thank you, Congressman. I work for the Housatonic Valley Association, so the waters that rise in western Massachusetts and go down to Long Island Sound is the watershed that we focus on. Your discussion of the Land and Water Conservation Fund struck me as one of those places where conversations with your Republican colleagues on that issue might bear some fruit.
Yeah.
Concrete examples of funding that is frozen now for projects under LWCF in our region and what's going to happen if that doesn't flow, I think would be helpful to give to some of your colleagues.
Yep.
The one that is coming to mind is the Highlands Conservation Act, which doesn't yet include Massachusetts, but someday, God willing, will. But it does include projects that we're celebrating right here today that are part of the Cooper Hill Conservation Project. So Ashley Falls and Sheffield on one side, but Connecticut on the other. I did the Connecticut part. And that includes hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Highlands Conservation Act, frozen now, and administered by our friends and colleagues here in the office that's also U.S. Fish and Wildlife Office that's scheduled for being shuttered. So that kind of information affects people in multiple states, including Pennsylvania, which is part of that act.
Right.
Thank you.
No, I think that's a good point. And again, remember, the Land and Water Conservation Fund was almost eliminated entirely when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House. And I don't know how I ended up doing the amendment, but anyway, I did. Maybe I call it, I don't know. I mean, I sound like you do it. But we were in the minority. I was a freshman, and all of you and your, allies throughout the country were unleashed, and we had a very strong bipartisan vote. And I think helping Republican members in particular connect the dots, when you freeze this funding, this is what it means to your constituents. We have to make these connections. I had a conversation with somebody on USAID, and they were like, oh, we don't want to do any more foreign aid. I reminded them that billions of dollars of the food that we send overseas is actually grown by farmers in the United States. You eliminate that money, what does that do to our agricultural economy? How do you make that up? So yeah, I like the idea that we're feeding hungry people halfway around the world. I actually think that's a good thing, and it makes us more secure, and it's in line with what I like to think our values are. But even if you don't, there's a real benefit locally to people in this country. And same with a lot of these conservation projects, and with regard to the land and water conservation money that may be frozen, I mean, remind people this is what it means. I mean, it's not just about a pretty place, it's also helps benefit the economy. People want to go visit, people want to hike, people want to stay there, people want to eat at restaurants nearby, people want to shop at stores nearby. Everybody benefits. And we need to get more people in the business community and in our chambers as well to be stronger allies on this stuff, because I think their voices would be really helpful right now.
Hi there. Thanks so much for this dialogue. It's really helpful. I'm coordinating a Forest Legacy project that was awarded in 2023 through the allocated in the IRA bill, which is now frozen. And I have landowners who have been working with us for over 5 years. We can't contract any more work. We can't do any closings. This is 2,000 acres of land in north central Massachusetts, in one of the fastest developing areas of the state. Just wondering what that fight looks like, and if there's, how worried should I be, and what should I be telling these landowners and these local contractors that we're working with?
I wish I could tell you, don't worry, be happy, but I'm I can't, because I don't know. These people are playing by a different rule book. But one of the reasons why I'm frustrated with what the United States Senate did by kind of giving the green light to the so-called continuing resolution that really wasn't a continuing resolution was that I thought we could have used that as leverage, and the leverage would have been to unfreeze some of these funds that have already been committed, to get a promise to stop the wholesale firing of federal employees, especially in our regional office, stop the closing, a pledge that you're going to actually respect Congress's role in appropriating money and your role in getting that money that they appropriate out the door, or a commitment to stop threatening federal judges. We get nothing. And, I'm not sure when the next opportunity will arise where we have that kind of leverage. I get it, it's a Sophie's choice, right? There was no good choices. But, and I know Chuck Schumer, he's a friend, but he took the worst of the two bad Sophie choices, right? And we're in a different moment now, right? So we're playing by the old rules, and they're playing by a whole different set of rules. And I think we have to understand that. And, even the way we communicate has to be different. I think that, the kind of MAGA wing of the Republican Party has been very good at, appealing to emotion. So, why should, if we fund these programs, that means, it's going to hurt businesses. Or, climate change is just going to raise your costs and cost jobs, all that kind of stuff. They're good at emotion. We've been good at policy, but you know what? People aren't paying attention to policy speeches anymore. People want to get their information, direct, to the point, quickly. And I think we have to understand that we're, even in terms of communicating and advocating, we're in a different reality right now. The other thing is that where we communicate is also important. I mean, I still read the New York Times and the Boston Globe, and I read my local papers, and I still watch CNN, and sometimes I watch 60 Minutes, or, it's like 40% of the American people fall in that category. Other people are, in other areas. I'm talking to high school kids now and college students about, help us identify the platforms that you follow and that you trust, where we can be present to advocate for the things that we think that are important, so that more and more of your generation kind of joins on board with us and fights. So this is we're in a different period right now. The old ways of everything, need to be updated. And the Republicans have been very good at that. They got about a 10-year advantage on us, creating a whole new kind of MAGA, extreme right-wing media infrastructure. And we're still doing press releases, and thinking that if we make the New York Times, all of our problems are solved. I want to be in the New York Times because I want to make sure we keep that 40%, but we need to be on other places as well. And that's a way we can extend our influence and our alliance. Yeah.
Congressman, earlier you mentioned oligarchs, robber barons, and the need for campaign finance reform. And most of us in this room, we saw the billionaires and centi-billionaires congregated around President Trump during his inauguration. So my question is, at what point do we know for certain when we have entered oligarchy? What are the signs? Has it already happened?
Yeah. So, for me, we're there. But for a majority, I think, in this country, and for a majority in Congress, they're not quite sure we're there. And the question always gets asked, what do you do if they continue to ignore, court orders? And what do you do if you continue to have a Congress that doesn't want to be a check on Trump because they're afraid they'll be primaried, and so they'd rather be quiet? What do you do if all the checks and balances are not working? And I think that's a really good question that people are going to have to think long and hard about. My own view, and this sometimes drives my staff crazy when I say this, but I think if we're going to have a constitutional crisis and they're not going to follow the rules, then we have to think outside the rules. And we have to think about things in terms of a national strike. We need to think in terms of more national days of protest. And in Europe and other countries, there's a longer history of these kinds of actions. But it requires, careful planning. But it is a way to say to them, no, we're not going to just sit back and let this democracy go by the wayside. We're not going to do that. Because that's all we have, right? It goes back to what I said. It's not institutions not going to save people. People are going to save people. People have to understand that people have to make it clear. We're not going to just go along to get along. And when we talk about authoritarianism and fascism, all that kind of stuff, I know it drives the right wing crazy, but understand, you go back and you look what happened in Europe. It just didn't. It wasn't like one instance that it all happened, right? It was little bits of pieces here and there, targeting this group, throwing that group under the bus, going after judges, going after a free press, going after activists, and, going after people who, quite frankly, are saying things that run contrary to what the wealthy in this country want. And again, these are discussions that I think we need to be having more of now about the what-ifs. I hope we don't get to that point, but if he decides to ignore the Constitution, what do? Do we say, oh, okay, oh, he ignored the Constitution, I guess we're screwed, right? No, there's got to be a response. And the courts don't have the ability, they don't have a police force to go and arrest everybody. I mean, that's under the Justice Department, which has been highly politicized. So anyway, a little off topic, but I'm just telling you what I'm thinking. Okay, and I guess the last question.
Thank you, Congressman. I guess there's a lot of grassroots talk about Democratic leadership and what they're doing and not doing, and I and a lot of people I know are wondering why we're not having a daily press availability to counteract what's going on. There are at least 10, 20, 30 things a day that this administration is doing that is counterproductive to what we're all about, indeed what the world is about, and I'm wondering if there's any discussion among the Democratic leadership of doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, so there is. I mean, so we're doing shadow hearings, and then we're going to do a daily kind of brief, probably led by a different member of Congress from a different part of the country every single day that we're in session, responding to what we're doing in Congress and responding to what is coming out of the White House. And so you're going to see more of kind of the resistance infrastructure begin to formulate, which I hope will be helpful in getting information out to all of you. Look, information is really valuable right now because things are happening so quickly and people don't know what to focus on. But in those briefs, I think there's also going to be instructions about, I mean, the most important thing to do today is to call and fight against X, and tomorrow will be Y, whatever. So we're all kind of coordinated. But look, I'll end with this, totally candid with you all. I don't think the Democrats have been particularly effective in these first few months, in these first couple of months. I mean, I'm just telling you, and I say that, and it's not because people are not trying. It's just we're trying to figure out, like, what works. And some people say, well, you should have anticipated all this was going to happen like this, and that's a fair criticism, but we're trying to work it out. I mean, we have Hakeem Jeffries, we have Catherine Clark, we had our issues retreat last week in Virginia, which was sobering, but people were very, very candid. And again, I'm a big believer that, we need to go out and we need to listen to people more. We need to do more in-person town halls. We need to respond to the issues that people think we have ignored. And we need to promise people that if you give us another chance, we're going to make government work. We're not going to just say we're for this or for that. We're going to say, we talk about lowering your health care costs, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to cut through all the red tape. We're going to say to corporate donors, screw you, and we're going to get that stuff done. And the same thing on a whole range of issues. And we're going to go back to focusing in on combating the climate crisis, protecting our precious natural resources, protecting open space, all those things. But we have to we have a trust problem right now. And I think we have to remind people not only what we're against, but we have to tell people what we're for. And again, I used to have an old history professor who used to end every class by saying the same thing. The world will not get better on its own. Remember that. And I'm like, okay, class is over. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I do now. Nothing changes. And you all know this. Maybe the land and water conservation victories, that would not have happened unless good, like-minded people came together and demanded it happen. So we can do this, and we will do this. And again, I will be wind at your back. So thank you.